Hi, and welcome to the SalesRX podcast. We provide actionable insights for revenue professionals looking to find the right prescription in their sales process. So let's jump right in. Hello, and welcome to all my Sales RXers and first-time listeners to the Sales RX podcast. I'm your host and your sales doctor, Chet Lovegren, and I'm super stoked for our episode today, where we're going to talk a little bit about embracing the SDR journey. My guest today is Dalton Van Hatchet. He is the CRO over at Felux. After graduating from college with a degree in marketing, he began his career as an SDR at BladeLogic under the leadership of John McMahon, who's the creator of MEDDIC, and Dev Ittycheria, who is now the CEO of MongoDB. Throughout the years, he's moved up the ranks to enterprise account management, director of corporate sales to VP of strategic sales, and now CRO of where he's at right now, Felix. Pavilion chapter head, he is also a strategic advisor to many growing companies and a co-founder of a DEI platform you might remember from our last episode with Kendrick Trotter, Us in Technology. He is also a recent addition to the hashtag, what I call Girl Dad Life, as he welcomed his baby daughter back in December of 2021. Dalton, welcome to the SalesRX podcast. Super excited to have you.
Chad, appreciate it. Thanks. I'm stoked to be here, really excited, and appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. And for everybody out there that's listening, Dalton and I had a little bit of conversation where we were talking about the episode, and you all know that one thing I'm really passionate about is the SDR journey. And I want to dive right in, Dalton, because a lot of times I notice that SDRs tend to despise their journey instead of embracing it. Oh, I have to put in my 1 year and I get promoted to AE, all that stuff. And sometimes we fail to recognize the benefit of that year and what that year or 2 years really brings. Now, you being someone who started your career in the SDR role can probably better than anybody attest to the fact that there are a lot of skills in the SDR role that you learned that you probably still use today, or at least a form of those skills that have been enhanced over your career. But do a deep dive for us on your journey from SDR to the executive table. And through that journey, highlight maybe 1, 2, or even 3 key skills you think translate to every level of someone's professional career as they climb that professional ladder.
Yeah, 100%. So just quick backstory. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I'm the son of 2 teachers. My mother was an elementary school teacher, and my father was an athletic director. And one of the cool kind of things that I got to embrace and be a part of was my father was actually he was an athletic director. He got appointed at age 23, which, has a lot of impact in my life because he had a lot of learnings on really like a lot like being an SDR, like having to do lots of different things and wearing many hats at a very, young part of his career. Mm-hmm. What was really cool about my father's journey was that he's probably one of the youngest ADs in the state of Oregon ever, but he in his first 20 years, they won about 4 state championships, but in his last 20 years, he was at the same school, Oregon Episcopal School, for 43 years. And in the last 20 years, they won 43 state championships. And one of the big kind of learnings from that he was able to kind of teach me was, about inputs. And so for him specifically, my father, Chris Van Hatcher, he spent a lot of time on building a program and kind of building a foundation and hitting the reset button and getting more diversity from a leadership standpoint. So like he spent a lot of time bringing in different coaches and different, people from different backgrounds to, participate and coach on these teams, but really spent a lot of time with the youth and like embracing a winning, a winning mantra and mentality. And so one of the learnings I kind of built there was really around inputs, and it actually helped me a lot early in my career as an SDR. But I went to school on the East Coast, so coming from Portland, Oregon to the East Coast, I was blessed enough to have an athletic scholarship to play college lacrosse. But one of the kind of interesting points of this is John McMahon, who's is the former CRO of PTC and inventor of MEDDIC. He actually sent a few folks from his team to go recruit, top business schools, captains of sports teams. And one of the things that he was really big on was coachability, drive, integrity, intelligence. And so you hear a lot of different organizations talk about, what is a good SDR? What are the characteristics? Coachability, being able to, learn and be a sponge and understand things right away. Drive, really inputs, like going the extra mile and putting the inputs and the work together to like build your foundation and set your career. Intelligence is pretty explanatory. And integrity. What do you do when people aren't looking, and how are you going to interact with customers, and are you going to do the right thing? Those are really the key characteristics that will make any SDR successful. And so one thing that's kind of I've learned too along the way is, learned this pretty early in my career too, is just because you're an athlete, a lot of times you see athletes get into sales, but just because you're an athlete doesn't mean you're going to be good at sales. Mm-hmm. You got to have, a lot of different experiences and be well-rounded in your approach on like how you build that foundation. But it was really helpful for me to have that, some of those experiences translated well. But, working as an SDR early, one of the things that John McMahon actually taught me was really, who's the most prepared in the room. He was always kind of pushing us to see who was the most prepared in the room. Yeah. And you could always tell who the most prepared person in the room was. And I was lucky enough to be in this, back then they were first line managers, second line managers, or individual contributors. But the people in the room, there's a podcast, the 33 CXOs, and I was blessed enough to be in the room with all of those people. So you talk about Luca Lazaron, who's the CRO of Sprinkler, Tom Schmidt, the CRO of Audit Board, Adam Aarons, the former CRO of Okta, just to name a few, and Cedric Pesch, who's the CRO at MongoDB. You could always see who the most prepared was in the room. So it's really important for me, and what John taught us is like, really try to go understand and talk to those people. Don't be afraid to talk to those people and understand how they prepared and why they prepared and what they prepared. So a lot of SDRs, that I work with and mentor and help, they're always asking me like, who are the best SDRs? Some of the traits besides coachability, drive, integrity, intelligence are really being innately curious. So like always wanting to understand the why behind things and being the most prepared. In a lot of these meetings, people are busy, leaders are wearing so many hats. A lot of SDRs, like if I had to give some advice around, early stage, is really focus on being, over preparing. It doesn't really cost you anything other than time, but, because you're really hyper focused on one part of the business, it's going to allow you to over prepare for meetings. So that was something I learned really early on in my career too.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I've always put on any deck when I'm talking about preparation and planning, if you can't spend 15 minutes preparing for tomorrow, you'll spend 8 hours doing nothing. And it's just plain and simple. Even if it's something as simple as putting gratitude for what happened that day, like even there's those tiny little things. And I mean, anybody can learn how to be coachable. In my opinion, anybody can learn how to increase their drive. Anybody can increase their intelligence, but that's kind of the secret sauce, in my opinion, is the planning and the preparation. And it's not that you have to sit for hours and hours. I tell SDRs, even 15 minutes will help you, because guess who's not doing that? 99% of other SDRs that you're competing against for what you're trying to accomplish are probably not preparing and planning, unless they've been fortunate enough to have good coaches in their life. One thing that I think is really interesting, right? I think if anybody in sales leadership, or anybody, especially in your situation, executive leadership, comes to SDRs and say, coachability is the key trait, I think they tend to go, oh yeah, well, it's easy for you because you're an executive, you are the coach. But as I know, getting closer to that level and being at a director level, you still get coached a lot, even when you are a leader. Give an example of where coachability comes in, even as a CRO of a company.
Yeah, 100%. So, as a CRO, you're going to embrace and encounter challenges on an everyday basis that you've never encountered before, especially at an early stage startup. And so one of the things, no different than being an SDR, I started my career at BladeLogic. We were selling compliance and configuration automation software. I came directly from a lacrosse locker room. I'm not a CS major. I was a marketing major. So like learning new things and embracing that is extremely important. And so as a CRO, you still encounter those on a daily basis. But what's really one of the kind of learnings I had early in my career is actually Cedric Pesch taught me this is, if you want to help lots of people and you want to be an executive, for example, like a CEO or a CRO or COO, you really need to have a broad experience or diverse experience of experiences. And so having a good advisory board, so like people you can rely on or you can talk to that maybe have been through those experiences before, helps you get through those unique challenges. So I always tell people, like, who is your advisory board and who are you building? And it doesn't mean you have to do this. You have to wait to do this when you're an executive. You can start that earlier in your career. Actually, a lot of the people that I started my career with are the same people who are on my personal advisory board that helped me out. And some of them, kind of started in similar positions as myself. And some of them were CROs back then, but having that kind of strong network that you can fall back on really helps. But really being an excellent problem solver too. If you encounter, lots of people think they're having a different experience because they change industries or they work in a different position, but it's really the same experience over and over again. But if you really broaden your experiences, you're going to become a much better problem solver. This is why SDRs, a lot of times make good CROs and executives, because they've experienced lots of different parts of the business early on in their career, and they've always been around that. And so that's something like, if you're at an early stage startup, for example, and you're talking in a product launch about a product launch, learn those traits, because those are learn what it's about, because those will be useful later on in your career. And that's what really embracing the SDR journey is. You're going to get exposed to a lot more things than a lot of other parts of the business. And so embracing that and understanding that is going to help you accelerate your career later.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, for example, I never had traditional software SDR experience, but I was a full cycle rep for 5 years before I even joined software, before I even jumped into SaaS. And I'll tell you, you think you don't do copywriting and write cold emails at this level, you still do. You know what I mean? Whether it was when I was looking for my next step and I ended up joining Pavilion and I was talking to LG about, hey, what does this look like? That's a cold email writing for candidacy, right? It's a cold email to sell your boss on, this feedback on this project or something that we should do differently, or the sequence that's not working. Those are still, to me, kind of cold emails, because you're trying to change someone's human behavior, right? It's a sale that's being made. And it's even that, I'm sure you have that all the time. I'm sure you're writing emails to your boss and your board and stuff, and, trying to sell them on concepts and ideas. I mean, when you're presenting data, right? You're storytelling with data, you're trying to fill somebody in on what happened and help them understand the value behind what's going on. I think, or
just even hiring, right, Chet? So hiring people, you're essentially telling a story of, what it's like, what this culture is like, or what it's like to work in this environment. It's literally the same as writing a cold email as an SDR and trying to brighten that up and portray and articulate certain aspects. It's all the same work. And one thing, in us in tech, it's a program that's helping underrepresented folks get into tech and tech sales. And I spend a lot of time. We have a kind of a boot camp aspect once the mentees are placed at a company like Pavilion's a partner of ours, as you know. And one of the things I do is I ask, I work with a lot of the folks that have already placed and they're in their first or second week. And I go around the room and ask, what does your day look like? And it's very similar. Each SDR or CS person is, it's all about the customer. It's all about, communicating and articulating value to customers or working with customers. And then I kind of ask them, as a CRO, what do you think that I do all day? And it's always, it's fun to get those answers because they're early in their career. But, really at the end of the day, it's very similar. I'm helping people help people do that. And that's essentially looking at metrics, looking at different parts of the business and really trying to understand where can we have the most impact and helping people with that. But still, you have to roll up the sleeves. And even as a CRO, you're still, essentially helping those people be more effective at their jobs, which includes, writing better messaging, articulating the value, honing in on the messaging, honing in on the vision as a company. It really hasn't changed a whole lot since my first day in 2007 as an SDR.
Yeah, it's crazy how similar it probably still is, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, one thing I'm a fan of, right? We could sit here all day long and give actionable advice about what people need to do, but how to is a whole nother thing, right? And so you hit on something really, really important there about putting together your board of advisors, right? How would you recommend an SDR goes about that? Like, what's the first thing I can do? If I'm listening, I'm like, Dalton, that sounds awesome. I would love to put together my own board of strategic advisors that I can use throughout my career and follow me and help shape and mold me into the person I want to become in the professional world. Where do I get started? What do I do?
Yeah, 100%. I think one thing that typically helps with people that I mentor as well is like actually take one step back and really, try to write down like your personal thesis, your why, like what are you trying to achieve? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? A lot of folks, typically when I'm helping folks, are either trying to really hone in on like who they are as a person or what they want to do. Sometimes it's a mix of both. Sometimes it's one or the other. But it's usually easy to see people that know who they are and what they want to do. And a lot of people are, everyone's journey is different and unique, and that's what makes everyone so special and great. But the challenge there is a lot of people compare themselves to other folks or other people's journey, when in reality, everyone's journey is unique. And so what I would challenge folks out there that are listening is to like write a personal thesis about where do you see yourself in 10 years and what are you trying to achieve? What are your non-negotiables when it comes to, the work environment? What are the things that what are the goals you're trying to extract through your career? And I think that will help you formulate who should be on this advisory board. And so if you want to be a CRO or you want to be, a CMO or a VP of sales, you need to go and find, different folks that don't just go to one. You need to have different purviews and different, diversity of mindset when it comes to those, to that personal advisory board, so you can learn different teachings. Everyone's journey is going to be different. And so I'm obsessed with stories and hearing people's stories and learning about them and trying to extract that and like the meaning of that and bring that into my own experience. So if you're going to put together your personal advisory board, really think about what are you trying to do first? And then if you want to be more, you lean towards something like marketing, or you want to work in an early stage startup, then go find 3 or 4 people that have worked in an early stage startup. Maybe it's someone that is in your organization now. Maybe it's someone outside. Maybe it's someone you can use different networking groups and different communities, like a Pavilion, for example. But really go understand that, and then try to get a diverse group of folks that you can learn their story. And a lot of people like to talk about themselves, right? We're all humans. And so, I would ask them about their story and ask them about their journey and how they got there. But you'll find even for SDRs, people like myself who are in a CRO position, everyone wants to help people. People want to help people. So if you're very intentional and you're saying, and you're very intentional in your approach, for example, hey, I'm an SDR at blah, blah company. I'm trying to become a CRO someday. I see that you're a CRO. I would just love to buy a cup of coffee and understand, 20 minutes about your journey. Maybe a lot of times you can get intros from other people. Maybe it's someone who's coached you. Maybe it's your hiring manager. Ask them for intros to these other folks. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how much help you'll actually get.
Yeah. And that's great that you said that, because you kind of answered what my second question was going to be is, you especially know this as an executive, it seems like you're running out of time, right? There's always that's the one resource we're always running out of. So what am I going to need to do as an SDR looking for that mentorship? What am I going to need to say to be able to pivot some value and get that, that earnest want from that person to mentor me? You also hit on community, right? Like, I don't think, and I would love to hear your opinion on this. Why do you think the SDR world has not caught on just yet to the full value of community? I mean, working for a company that is a career enablement platform here at Pavilion, I understand like that executives and even like frontline managers, they understand the importance of what community can do for them personally and professionally in their career. Why do you think that hasn't caught full fire yet in the SDR world? And do you see that shift happening sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I do. I've seen a lot of it. Like I'm SDR Defenders, good friends with Kyle Coleman and Nikki Ivy, and they've started kind of dabbling in that community. I do think that, from my experience, there's I think the environment I started out as an SDR in was very close guarded on how the process of things and how we do things. And this is, 2007. And really, I mean, there's a few of us at BladeLogic, but the idea of an SDR was very new back then. It was a new concept. It was very early days. I mean, arguably one of the first SDRs there is, right? And I think that traditionally you had like inside sales, and then you had, maybe like a marketing associate, but someone who kind of bridged that gap of like, marketing and outbound and inbound and events and all of these things. It was a new concept. But I think a lot of the environment back then was very close guarded on how you prospect and how you do things. But in today's world, that's not the case. The information is available. We live in the age of the internet. And mobile devices everywhere. People are sharing information all the time. So I do think that it's just a matter of time that that people are going to embrace that. And you see it a lot more. Us in tech, we have, we're helping people get into their first or second or third tech job. But then we built a community so that people kind of have a support system of like others that are going through the same challenges. Because if you ask a room full of SDRs what they did on a daily basis, it's very similar. It doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter, what they're selling, enterprise, commercial, it's very similar in their approach. And so you're going to see a lot more, communities being built and people embracing that, because there's a lot of value from sharing. And I can tell you from my experience, and like working in an office is another good kind of teaching point, is like when you're in an office and environment, it's important that you have, both experiences. Like I personally enjoy working remotely so I can spend time with my family, but being in an office is important because you get FaceTime with executives and other people, and you can kind of build that rapport. And what's really important about that is that's going to be really important for later in your career. And so when companies invest in having, some sort of events where they're bringing the teams together, really as an SDR, you should be all over that and leaning into that and going, really taking that seriously, because that's how you build your network. And I know from listening to the last podcast with Jolene, she talks about, your network is your net worth. And that's really something that SDRs need to embrace. And so getting that FaceTime is an important part of that.
Yeah, I agree. The never-ending conversation about in-office, hybrid, fully remote, but especially at the SDR role, it's really important. Like when you hire AEs, like most of the time they've been an AE before, they kind of have that down. But as an SDR, like there's so many things that are new to you, right? Or things that are not new to you, but new to you at that company that you just don't have that adaptability yet because you haven't switched jobs. It might only be your second job or third job. That are so important to learn how those skills adapt and change, and providing those core competencies, which I think kind of leads me into my next question. You touched on how to put together that strategic advisory board, but you hit on some really important skills there. I believe you said coachability, intelligence, drive. Like if I'm an SDR, those are very intrinsic things. What are some ways I can go about learning those skills? Is it just a matter of experience? Is it just a matter of working and getting lucky and working around great leaders like a Dalton or a Laura Guerra or a Kevin Dorsey? Like, what does that look like? How do I obtain those skills?
Yeah, I think, coachability is something that, that you just need to, embrace and understand that you're a sponge. And so one thing John told me early in my career is watch what makes everyone great around you. If you can take what makes them great and put it into your arsenal, you'll be, a better player. And that, I kind of embraced that early on, but, I think that, a lot of these things are just a lot of times are innate in people, but I think I agree with you that you can hone those skills and continue to work on them. And I think being coachable is being innately curious and asking more questions and trying to understand the why. I think if you want to see drive and what that looks like and really be surrounded by great leaders that have drive, but I think the question when it comes to drive for a lot of SDRs that are early in the career is not so much the drive, or they probably wouldn't have been hired. It's actually like organization and time management skills. And so where you acquire those is watching really good people that are good at those things like time management, and really understanding like how they prepare and do things and how they're able to do those things. A lot of the people I work with ask, how do you balance, all these different things that I do? But what I'll tell you is like, I become excellent at time management, but on top of that, also a lot of the problems are the same: people, process, and technology. Doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter what company. In a lot of these teachings I do with the mentees from us in tech, for example, or in Pavilion, I can go around the room and ask a little bit about what the company does, but what their company does. But at the end of the day, if you're selling software or a solution, the businesses are only buying it to make money or save money. There's nothing else. So at the end of the day, it's people, process, and technology within, within the constructs or confines of saving people money or making them money. And so when you think about like your skill sets and how they align to that and how you can hone them, go see people and how they prepare and ask them, instead of being drawn to who has the most verbiage or jargon of your company that you don't fully understand yet. Understanding your company's value prop and understanding the jargon of the industry you're selling into comes with time. But understanding preparation and how you prepare and attack things and attack problems, that's something you don't have to wait for. You can learn that immediately and put it into practice. So I would tell everyone, like, go find the most prepared person in the room and just ask them about their day and how they organize their day. And I think it will help a lot of SDRs early in their career, which I spend a lot of time with, which is helping them organize their time management in their day so they can be more effective and have more impact in their career.
Even more important, it makes you universally adaptable, because if you understand XYZ terminology in your specific industry, that only works if you're in that industry, right? The stuff I learned in logistics and supply chain, it's great, great to know that stuff because I can use it with anybody that I'm talking to in logistics and supply chain. But how to actually block schedule and stick to tasks is I can take that anywhere, right? I can even take it into my personal life when I'm like, hey, it's Saturday and I want to get a lot accomplished with my day, with my free time. What do I do? So I love that you put that there. And I agree. Some of those skills are innate. Some you can hone in over time. I'd say that a few years ago, I wasn't a very coachable person. I think that's actually something where I said, hey, I need to be more open to feedback. I need to be more coachable, not take things personally. And I love looking at where I'm at now, where I'm just like taking the feedback the way that I am, as opposed to, I remember a few years ago, I'd probably be like taking personal offense and I'm like, what are you saying? I suck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But especially for SDRs, that's tough because you're new and you might already feel some sort of imposter syndrome. So to be able to have to learn that it's like, hey, Jolene had a great verb about that too. And when we were talking about vulnerability, about like, hey, if you're at the company, you're probably giving me feedback in my best interest. So I'm valuable to you. But a lot of times people take that initially as I did something wrong, which is just human nature, and that's okay. But learning how to uncover that and how to discover that and recognize that when it happens, I think is one of the biggest learning things when it comes to coachability.
Yeah. And I would just say, like, we always talk about in like MEDDIC, for example, we always say MEDDIC is a framework, right? It's a sales methodology. It's okay to have gaps in your deals. It's not okay to do nothing about it. It's the same in your career. It's okay to have gaps. It's not okay to do nothing about it. If you're trying to grow, if you want to grow to something, you're going to have gaps and you're going to get feedback and people are going to tell you. It's what you do with that information that's going to make or break your success and your growth. And so it's very similar. It's okay to have, gaps in your experiences, but, it's on you to go fill those gaps. No one's going to do it for you. And so that's an important kind of lesson too, when it comes to coachability. Like, I love what you said about, you really had to take a hard stance on your own career growth around, coachability. And so that's what it's about, is like understanding who you are and your gaps, and then doing something about it and putting an action plan together to do something about it.
Yeah. Now, I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on this, because I think, almost coming to close here, I would love to hear from you, just because in personal experience and experience with managing and leading SDRs, a lot of times people tend to see this end goal and they chase the end goal, but then all these pitfalls and things happen along the way, and they either get burnt out or they fizzle out or they lose that motivation. So if I'm an SDR and I'm coming into the fold and I'm saying, hey, someday I want to be a VP of sales, someday I want to be a head of marketing, maybe someday I would love to run a product team, because I have a bit of that technical background, or I want to learn that technical background, but I have this like you said, in that strategic advisor plan, I have this 10-year goal in mind. What advice would you give to that person who's chasing that end goal to make sure that they stay steady throughout that course of their professional trajectory and keep strong and stay driven?
Yeah. So, really a lot of people, they get into sales or they join a tech company as an SDR because they're attracted to like the lifestyle meaning the pay that comes with working in tech or tech sales. One of the things that it's really important to understand is like owning your narrative. And so when I say owning your narrative, it's really, if you can acquire the skill sets that will make you self-sufficient, then people won't be, a lot of times people early in my career said, hey, come do this, or I want you to come and join this team. People don't ask me that anymore. They ask me, what do I want to do? And it's a process. It's a process you can't cut corners on. So I always tell people in my teachings in us in tech is like, you're learning how to fish. So embrace learning how to fish. If you learn how to fish, you can feed and provide for yourself, right? If you learn how to teach people how to fish, you can have a business. If you learn how to teach people how to fish, you can have a community. And so what's really important about that is like owning your narrative and acquiring that skill set so you can be self-sufficient, so that you can make the decisions you want and not have to be on someone else's narrative. And so that's what a lot of people are looking for. And like the true definition of wealth, in my opinion, is freedom. Freedom meaning you can do what you want whenever you want. And if you really want that, it doesn't mean you have to have lots of money to do that. That doesn't mean you have to have millions and millions of dollars. But that what comes with that is owning your narrative. So when I said it kind of earlier is like understanding who you are as a person and where you're trying to grow to, and then building that personal thesis and working your way backwards from that. That's going to help you, but that's going to allow you to own your narrative. Because a lot of people think they are in control, but they're actually on someone else's narrative. And when you're an SDR, it's, yes, of course, a lot of times it's an entry-level position or you're early in your career, but you're learning. You're going to school and you're learning how to build a business. And if you can learn appropriately how to build a business, when you have a great idea or something comes up or an opportunity, you can do whatever you want. And so that's what's really important. And you can't cut corners. Like your decisions that you make now are going to affect you later in your career. So just remember that too. If you kind of, get into a position where maybe you chased a title or a 10K bump, but you're not really learning the skills that you need, it's going to come back to haunt you later. And so you have to remember that. So I always say, when you're young in your career, please value learning over earning. Learning over earning will help you significantly later so you can slow down and speed up and really hit that career acceleration to what you want. So that's one thing that kind of stuck with me. I had some really good people around me that taught me these things, and then hopefully I can help some people out too. But that's, learning over earning it early in your career is significantly will help you later in your career.
Yep. And I know that a lot of people listening that are SDRs or looking to break into tech, first time SDRs are probably like, well, yeah, you two have gotten to the positions that you've been trying to get to. It's easy for you to say that, but I can attest to that 100%. It was all about how much knowledge, information, and experience can I soak up. And yeah, there comes a point where, this is okay that you need to chase a title. At some point, you're ready for that. You're ready for that responsibility. You're ready for everything that's coming to you. Right. But don't get too hasty to get there too quick, because you gotta crawl before you can walk. Right. It's
if you're not learning
super slow.
And if you're not in those, what I would recommend too is, look at leaders, look at their track record of like how many people they've, gotten promoted, or how many people they've built and helped their career and gone on to do bigger things. Prioritize those people over anything else. And so if you can go learn from like the great leaders and coaches, it's going to significantly help you accelerate your career. And sometimes that comes with a title bump and a pay increase. But what I would just tell anyone is it's not, taking a 10K here or a title bump, but then being in an environment that's not enabling you or teaching you the skill sets you need for later in your career, it will come back to haunt you. And that's my message. Like there are cases, but and just really prioritize the learnings. And so when you're interviewing or you're ready to take that next step to an AE, really understand who your coach is and their track record and what they do to prioritize your enablement and your success. And when people tell you a lot of times that you don't have this skill or you don't have enough experience, what I hear, and I tell people this all the time, is I don't know how to teach you that, or I don't have time to teach you that. So that's, a lot of people lean into that and they get offended and they take offense to it and they really get emotional and go after that person about like, hey, I deserve to be here. When you really should be, stepping back and taking a look to think like, oh, maybe that company doesn't know how to teach the skills that they think I need, or they don't have the time or the in-house expertise to do it. And when you jump into those positions, you could have a title bump, you could have 10 or 20K more, on your OTE, but you're not learning the experiences you need to take the next 3 or 4 steps in your career.
Yeah. I think some great closing remarks there, some quotes that I'm going to take away from this: learning over earning, own your narrative. It's okay to have gaps in your process, but it's not okay to not fix it. I love that one. It's probably human nature, right? All of us, even to this day, probably still have some gaps in our lives, but it's not okay to do nothing about it. I love that. That's a great reminder. Dalton, fill us in. Where can people find you? How can they connect with you if they're like, man, I got to get in front of Dalton, or hey, I want to connect with us in tech? Where can people find you?
Yeah, 100%. So Dalton Van Hatchet on LinkedIn, or Dalton at usintechnology.com. Always happy to connect and open to talking to and meeting new people. I'm one of the chapter heads at Pavilion. If you haven't, joined the Pavilion community, I highly recommend it. A lot of the companies I'm advising and some of the folks I met came from my connections in Pavilion. So it's been a great journey there too.
Fantastic. Well, we love having you. I really enjoyed our conversation today. I know the listeners out there got some value from it as well. Really important stuff. For anybody interested in engaging with more of the SalesRX community, you can find our podcast page on LinkedIn. You can also connect with me through various channels and follow through my homepage, my resource page for invites to Pavilion if you're interested in joining a professional development community. And if you're an SDR looking to get promoted to AE, there's always the SDR to AE program that doesn't cost you a single dime and will help give you the resources you need to hold your manager accountable, as well as enable your career from beyond the SDR role itself. That's all we have for today. Dalton, again, thank you for your time, and we'll catch everybody on the next episode.